Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a show where we aim to educate, inspire and entertain through real life stories and interviews from people in the Scottish property community.
As always, thanks for listening and give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to join us at our monthly networking events on the first Wednesday of every month. Tickets are available on our website. So without further ado, we'll just cut straight into this week's podcast. Okay, great to have you back, Davy Hutton, for our market update. Stephen Clark, how are you?
Good. It's good to have Davy back in the hot seat.
Upbeat, look, I'm clapping hands and smiling.
Yes, let's go.
Shit, Billy's kidding, it's not.
Well, I was up till 1:30 in the morning last night. I hope you did.
You rock roll star.
Hence why me and Davy aren't fucking prepared.
Yeah.
He gave us
did your research and read all the articles that I've sent you for this market update. Because
This is why Nick sounds really intelligent in the market update, so doesn't he? He sends them at 1:30 the night before, and then he's the only one that fucking speaks because he's the only one that done his research.
He reads it off his screen.
so that I can let her know what I'm talking about. Aye. No, it's great to have you back, Davy. We always love to chat. And do you know why? Because it's real.
Yes.
It's just real. You know, you always say yourself, you don't need to sell yourself. You've been doing it that long. So, you know, I think the danger a lot of time is that we bring in, I'm saying all the guests we bring in are great, right? But sometimes obviously they don't want to tell the real story because they're scared in case it impacts their business. But you can sit here today and say, no, it's shite. Things are not great. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we like it.
Stolen my power. How do you know I was going to say that? Is it because I say it every time?
Exactly. Things are terrible. Don't believe the estate agent that says the market's flying.
Everybody's got something to sell. I've just got to a stage in my life where I don't need to sell it. I don't. I like analysing it. I like working out how things work. And as you know, Stephen said before, like, you know, there's always different directions to go in. If you're not telling yourself the truth, you can't do this pivot that you talk about. You know, it's.
How you been keeping? You're looking good.
Thank you very much. I've been doing a bit of moisturising.
What's your daily moisturising routine then? How do you keep yourself looking so good then, Davey? How often do you train?
Look at my forehead. Look at that. You see,
That's why you wear that.
When I do that, you can grow totties in the lines of my forehead. So next time you see me, I'll probably be Botoxed out my napper.
But you're in the gym, right? So you every day at the gym?
Every day at the gym. Or Sunday.
Brilliant. I wish I could
well,
have that motivation.
It's not so much motivation. For me, it's necessity. I knackered my back when I was my late 20s. And I have to go. If I don't, my core packs in that transfers to the back. Everything just falls like dominoes if I don't. So it became a daily routine. It's like going to your work. You don't think about it. When you break the routine, that's when it becomes difficult. I'll start again next week. I'll start again next month. I'll start after Christmas. I don't really have that luxury.
I always find it's that standard you set yourself, set yourself that standard. You're going every day or you're going whatever 4 times a week, 5 times a week.
So I think our gym membership at David Lloyd's about £260 a month for the family, and I broke it down. I think we've been about like maybe 3 times in the past 2 weeks.
I love being a fiver.
Like that works out about what, £50 a visit.
I love being a fiver.
Fifers, my gym memberships.
Duncan Barentine knew that fifers were that fucking tight. He's got the most expensive gym in Fife, and I think it's £53 a month.
That's good.
Mine's 15 quid a week. Oof. No, it's not. It's 15 quid a month. I go to JD gyms. Oh. And it's great.
That's why Davy's fucking loaded.
I've been in it for a year.
I
hate wasting money. See, as soon as I did that calculation that you've just done, no danger. What would I be doing that for?
Plus, then I go there and buy like coffees and lunches, and by the time you know it, you've walked out. You're like
£1,000 a month bill for the fucking doing
membership. You've not trained and you've spent money.
I use it for meetings and it's like my office. Do you know what I mean? So like I'm saving that way. So yeah, I mean, how's business? Like we're going to talk about the property market. We're going to talk about property prices, rents, how the government are fucking the whole thing up, and all the economic stuff as well. But on the ground, Davey, what are you seeing at the moment in terms of, obviously you've got your estate agency, Quick Sale, you're still occupying the prime time airwaves on Radio Clyde. What's been happening?
Pound shop celebrity. What's happening? It's difficult to tell. I mean, we obviously do different things. We've got the estate agency side, we've got the auction side, we've got the development side, and we've got the rental side. So generally speaking, 2 out of 4 of them tend to be doing okay. If you get 4 of them all going well at the one time, everything's great. Very, very rarely.
When was the last time that happened?
No, exactly.
That's when you can afford a £260 a month gym membership.
Yes, exactly. I think house prices are pretty stable, and probably likely to rise over the course of the year is my gut feel just now. I think mortgages are obviously more easily available than they were the last time we spoke, so that brings buyers back into the market. Sellers are still not selling, so the volume levels on the market.
But if you know, kicked off a wee bit more positive to 2024, that the last time we had you in, it was pretty negative. But all the articles that we see here from other estate agents are saying that January's kicked off to a great start.
You tend to get the end of January, beginning of February tends to kick back in, and it's people that have been delaying stuff that think now's the time to act. So you do always get that. We got a level of that, then it tails away fairly quickly back to where it's been. But I think the mindset of people's changed a little bit. It doesn't take an awful lot of mindset change to alter the percentages in the market. I think people now think towards extending their own property. I think because they look at it and say, I can sell my house and I can make strong money for it, but the dream house that I want to move to isn't on the market. Mm-hmm. And even if it is on the market, there's multiple bits of competition trying to buy it. So
there's more cost associated with it.
We'll just stay where we are because we're comfortable here. So it might not be perfect for us, but we'll stay here until the volumes increase.
And that probably ties in what I'm seeing as well with the construction. If the construction guys are busy doing extensions, people not moving, construction costs are still high.
Yeah, they're really high.
I've seen some articles talking about construction costs and all the rest of it, and obviously mortgage interest rates impact as well. Some of the house builders, I see there was one, Stuart Milne or something, went bust there recently, and then there's a few struggling. There was a couple merged down in England and that.
I got a bit of a fright with an insurance estimate. It was a wee bit of a lesson learned, actually. I'd bought the commercial property and I insured it based on the construction value base 3 years ago. Compared it to a couple of surveyors. Yep, fine. There's the insurable value. Put a claim in for the insurance and it goes, it's underinsured. I'm like, fucking what? So they put in their survey and they'll come back at I think I put in like £1,000 a square metre for building it. They were £3,000. So for this 85 grand commercial purchase, they were coming about 2.4 million to reinstate this building.
So if you had an insurance claim on that, they would pay you 1/3 of what you claimed.
Exactly. I was putting a 40 grand insurance claim and they're like, no, we're giving you fucking 16, 17 grand back on it. So it kind of stung me, but I've kind of resolved it, slightly resolved it. But what it showed me was inflation and construction costs were that high that surveyors are putting the bill costs up so high. Yeah,
insurance companies putting the costs up a little. Even things like, you look at car insurance now, it's nuts the levels that it's rising at. Mm-hmm. Just everything appears to be broken.
Rampant. Mm-hmm.
And you think back, to a time 30 years ago where we could afford to run an NHS, we could get our roads right, we could get our bins collected, we could do all of these things. Well, what's changed in the tax income that means that we're now skint and we can't do these things? And what's changed is the rise of the corporation. Mm-hmm. It's the rise of the Amazons and the Starbucks that are enormous global corporations that we never used to have. And if all three of us owned a coffee shop, that coffee shop would be paying its taxes, it'd be paying its VAT and things like that.
Talking about bins, I need to pay £50 now to get my grass picked up out my brown wheelie bin.
I saw something really interesting. You want to take it back to your bins?
You're talking about bins. This is important. You're talking about how the system's broken. Glasgow.
I see the big picture and you bring it back to your bins. Tiny wee picture.
Glasgow City Council are now charging you £55 a year, £50 a year for a permit to pick up a brown bin.
David Lloyd's membership's just been cancelled.
With your grass cutting.
Because they're skint.
They are skint, 100%.
And they're skint because the money's not coming into them from the things that we used to have, the gas, the electricity, the water boards, the things that were the income generators for the country. That was your infrastructure.
Not nationalised.
And it brings in an initial amount of money. Mm-hmm. I think when they sold the gas off, it brings in £9 billion, which is what allowed Maggie Thatcher to fuel her revolution. But thereafter you've got
the revenue's gone.
So are you a supporter of communism then? state-owned.
Communism's an ideal, it doesn't work in practice.
I was chatting with someone in the gym the other day. Well, when I go to the gym, I usually sit in the sauna and talk shite rather than actually working it.
Wish I'm in a coffee shop.
But it was funny because we're chatting about the economy and like the fact that working families. Remember, growing up, your dad could work and your mum could be a stay-at-home mum. That's not the fucking case anymore.
Oh, that would suit you down. That would suit you perfectly.
If I wasn't a business owner and could be flexible, I don't know how the fuck.
But you look at everything that's happening now in the world, all the negativity that's out there, all the potential end of the world situations that are out there, and then you see the stats on young people, 4 out of 10 saying that they're probably not going to have kids, or they're certainly contemplating not having kids. Because the future's uncertain for them. So if the future's uncertain, what we do is we live for today.
Yeah.
And they're not studying this in depth. They're only picking up the headline things that they hear and doing the same as their pals.
Because their attention span's getting fucking squeezed right down to a TikTok video worth 3 seconds.
But I mean, if you look at it from an intellectual point of view, your corporations now are so large. Amazon is, 1 million butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, all who used to be independent businesses. So if Amazon aren't paying any tax, the tax income isn't coming into the country's governments. And how can I explain it? Governments existed to control corporations, to legislate, to put rules in place for how a corporation can make profit. But now the corporation is so large that it owns the politicians. So the politicians have become middle management.
The puppets, yeah.
And what should happen when that system fails is your free press kick in and they hold your politicians to account for not holding your corporations to account. But who owns
the media?
The media now is the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this thing coming in 3 different directions. At the same time, people are hypnotised by their phones. It's the opioid of the age.
Yeah.
So nobody protests.
And then the cancel culture comes in.
And you've just got this thing where it's like pincer movements in all directions. And I don't actually think, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think they're sitting at Davos or, the Illuminati are planning out this or the Rothschilds are planning out this. It's just an inevitable thing that if corporations exist to make profit and corporations become bigger and bigger and bigger, this is what happens.
Mm-hmm. I think the Scottish government are not exactly helping things by being one of the highest taxed nations. We're one of the highest taxed nations now. Is that not deterring businesses coming here to set up?
I think that's coming at it from the wrong angle. I think if you don't have income coming from the corporation, you have to replace that income somewhere else. And it's exactly the same in England. It's exactly the same everywhere else. You might not see it in the income tax rates, but they have to get that taxation in from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at like Ireland or something like that, I think their Ireland's corporation tax is like 15% or something like that. So I think it's low, much lower than UK. So a lot of the big companies like you're talking about, Amazon, Facebook, all this, I think Facebook have got a massive headquarters in Ireland. Obviously that brings jobs, that stimulates the economy. That's the idea in it, that's the argument.
That is the argument that tends to be placed by the corporation. Now, I don't know where if you look at the obvious stuff, look at the water being privatised, and we're now pumping shite into rivers and polluting everything. In England, Scotland's different on the water system. But what are we doing about it? We're still paying bonuses out to these people for literally providing a shite service.
It's actually it's something you mentioned about the water. I looked into a land development deal about 4 or 5 years ago, bought the site, put in a plan of mission for the few houses and jumping through the loopholes to get the surface water. I dug deep into this subject and it turns out that when Scottish Water took over the rights of it in 2008, I think it was the Scottish government says they weren't going to pay for surface water to go into their combined drains. So obviously Scottish Water said, you're not fucking putting in, then you have to come up with your own system. But because the financial crash happened, I think they convinced Scottish Water just to allow it for a certain period of time to stimulate the economy. From the last few years, they've stopped allowing it. So from the site that we stacked up, oh, beautiful there, we had to go and drill down 40 metres down and come up with a system for dispersing all the surface water, which you weren't allowed to put in the drains. So that added an extra 40 grand on the development cost, which made the site, the smaller site, kind of commercially unviable. So things like that, you're right, it's having these knock-on effects on the economy.
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of ground in Ayrshire a couple of weeks ago that a guy wanted me to sell. He wanted 40 grand for it. It was a plot with planning permission for 2 semi-detached houses. And I looked at it and I said, your plot's got no value.
Mm-hmm.
It's in one of the kind of the old estates. Mm-hmm. You're going to build...
Like end values, fuck all.
Exactly. The
build costs are
value
huge.
is the build cost.
Yeah.
So the bit of ground is worth nothing. So that now needs to sit there until such times as cost of build come down, which they're not going to.
Or a builder comes along that can do it at cost price. And
and they're only going to do that when they've got no other work.
Yeah.
And they've got tons of work.
Yeah.
Just now. And I'm finding it really interesting just now how broken everything actually is.
Mm-hmm.
People listening will be able to relate to trying to get a doctor's appointment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my doctor's surgery used to have 4 doctors in it. It's got 1 now. Where did the 3 go? And what happened was they retired because the way that the pensions worked, and they thought, fuck this. Mm-hmm. And they got out. So there's not enough doctors now.
It's an interesting chat because we spoke about this off air as well, that you kind of need to feel with your gut. You were said you need to kind of feel it in your gut of everything else that's going on around you to make the right decisions and what you're trying to invest in the way the market's going.
Long term, you cannot have a good housing market if everything else is broken. And I don't know, the negative side of me says, I don't know how you can sort it. I don't think Keir Starmer makes any difference in terms of how you deal with the corporation. I don't think anybody coming in makes any difference.
They're too big now.
Yeah, they are too big.
But you said that this is what happened. You said something right at the start of that about this is what happens when you sell off all your assets and all that, and government lose control and stuff. I disagree with that though, because look what's happened in Scotland with, well, first of all, there was the ferry disaster, building the 2 ferries, taking over the Ferguson shipyard. Absolute disaster. They've still not finished 2 ferries that they're trying to build.
Yeah, that's a
way over budget.
That's a different thing, Nick. That's government intervention on private companies.
What about the trains?
Well, you take a look at what happened in Putin's Russia. We'll probably all agree that Putin's not a very nice man. But the electricity, the gas, the water, all of these things got seized and became in the possession of the oligarchs. The oligarchs are controlled by Putin. Now, these stories, everybody's up in arms about this, the Russian money in the hands of all these very rich individuals.
Well, the guy that just apparently went for a walk and died, what's his name, Navalny?
Yeah.
He was talking out about it, wasn't he? He was trying to expose it.
Well, exactly. But you tell me how that's different, what happened there, as to what we did. We sold off all of these things to rich individuals. And okay, you can say loads of people made 300 quid off their British Gas shares. But how many folk do you know in the real world that are actually trading in shares? These are big corporations that are trading in these assets. They're hedge funds. They're, it's exactly the same situation. The people that benefit are the shareholders. The shareholders are these big corporations and these big institutions.
So you're not a fan of capitalism?
I think it works to a degree, but I think ultimately it fails. Because, greed consumes. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos kind of fighting to be the richest guy in the world. What the fuck's that all about? You've got enough money there to last you for like a gazillion years.
Solve fucking up most of the world's problems.
Yeah, and we're now so celebrity obsessed that anytime you open your news app, it'll be Elon Musk says this about almost anything.
But then I'm pretty sure if you went the other way and you look at pre-Putin, when it was like the former Soviet Union and all the rest of it, I'm pretty sure living conditions for the majority of the population weren't that great when everything was state-owned.
No, I don't. I'm not suggesting that you go back.
Go capitalist
that way. There has to be balance.
Aye.
And what we've done is we've let the thing get unbalanced. Mm-hmm. It's got top heavy. And I don't know how you control it back towards the centre. I don't know how you do it when
you charge £50 a year to pick up your grass from your wheelie bin. That's what you do.
Next, going to bring it back to the small. Okay.
Right, let's get on. I like that. I like that chat. because we can go off on all different rabbit holes in this podcast with Davy Hutton, and I like that stuff. But let's bring it back a wee bit to the property market and the market and what's happening. So the headline stats of the last month, right? UK inflation holds steady at 4%. CPI, Consumer Price Index, remains flat, okay, which was a little surprise. Some economists, let's say, thought that was going to spike up a little bit because of the stuff that's happening in the Red Sea. Attacks on ships and that, which was possibly going to have an impact on imports coming into Europe and stuff. Bank of England base rate, something that we keep an eye on, obviously, for mortgage rates and stuff like that, remains unchanged. So they held that at 5.25%. Again, different economists, different views. Some saying that, well, interest rates are going to start coming down come summertime, possibly come down to like 4% or something like that. We were talking about what impact does that have then on, mortgage lending and the housing market? Does that then boost things? And lastly, we are now in a technical recession. We're in a recession. How does that feel? The definition of a recession is two consecutive quarters of negative growth. But really, I think we were already in that.
Yeah, but
not like,
that's talking about gut feelings. Do not feel like we've been there for a year.
That comes down to your feeling on the ground. Everybody knows we've been in a recession. It's been shit for ages, so no change there.
Aye.
You can paper over cracks, you can cover it up all you like, but the economic situation has been shit for a long time. How does it get better? You've got political uncertainty just now because you're in election year.
Who's going to win that?
well,
and more interestingly, who does Davy Hutton vote for?
I struggle with it. I mean, I couldn't vote Conservative. I just couldn't.
Right.
I think what happens is the Conservative Party lose the next election. The mental far right side of it is in the ascendancy. I think they'll join forces with the Nigel Farage reform crew and they'll become rabid right. And that's the kind of worrying thing in world politics just now, how these things are divided. You see with the Trump thing in the States and the MAGA movement. And, this is what happens when you spend a long time forgetting about the people at the bottom end. You create an underclass, for want of a better description. And nobody gives a shit about them politically because they tend not to vote. Then along comes somebody like Trump, Le Pen in France, Boris Johnson here, and they realise how to harness that vote. And then it gets quite scary because you find out there's more of them than there is us. But you've never had to address it. You don't see it in your normal day. The people that have been forgotten about, but there's an awful lot of them.
So is there a rise in the far right at the moment then, especially if Trump...
It's populism.
Trump gets in.
It's far right politics that they're following, but the people that are subscribing to it or adhering to the message are not necessarily far right in their views, because the person who would have voted for Jeremy Corbyn also could have voted for Nigel Farage. The person who would have voted for Donald Trump could also have voted for Bernie Sanders. It's the wrecking ball that they're interested in. I've got nothing to lose. If I've got no money, what have I got to lose? And somebody said to me recently, it was actually, it was Hogmanay actually, totally anti-SNP, and Nicola Sturgeon had come on the television in the background and got the tirade of abuse. Now, to me, I thought Nicola Sturgeon did a pretty good job, if I'm honest. I thought she was very good with the media. I thought she was very good during COVID. And she's a serious politician, whether you like her or whether you don't.
Still waiting to see these WhatsApp messages, though.
For fuck's sake, I mean, I've got a lot
Boris, what was it? Boris, is it?
A fucking prick or something like that.
That'll look like...
that was what most people were saying anyway.
Exactly, but I mean, I'm not a great believer in this kind of being able to get into your WhatsApp messages. I hope nobody ever gets into my WhatsApp messages.
Jail time.
Are you actually married?
He's probably married longer than you've been alive. Or at least it feels that way.
I feel like we're getting because we know Davy now, right? We've had him in a few times. We can now start asking the personal questions.
We just discovered he's fucking married.
I'm just fascinated with these earrings as well. I want to know the backstory to those. Are they
pearl earrings?
Are they pearls?
Yeah, pearls and diamonds, like diamonds and pearls.
Beautiful.
It's thank you very much.
Go on a tangent here.
Shiny things. I'm kind of magpie that way.
I had a question for you. We kind of talked about off here. One of the articles that Nick just read out was about the mortgage rates potentially going lower come the summer. Do you think, looking at it from the ground of the estate agency, that you'll see more stock come onto the market and people will be a bit more up for moving when mortgage rates come down?
I don't know. I've made a decision just in the last couple of weeks to move more into the rental side.
Right.
I mean, I've got a rental portfolio there, but obviously we have cash sitting to buy properties.
Scumbag landlord, another scumbag landlord.
For your own stock, though.
Yes,
Aye,
but there's no point in me having money sitting to buy properties that are not there to buy. So the ones that I've got in development just now, I'm probably just going to hold on to them and we'll rent them out. So
I suppose a question that I suppose something that you'd mentioned off here as well, Nick. There, if you're sitting there with cash in the bank and you get a 5% in the bank versus a 7% yield on property, you're still going with property.
Yeah,
you still see it as a better class.
Yeah, well, in reality, you know, in company money, you don't actually get returns like
exactly.
that, you know, in current accounts and whatnot, because the money has to be sitting there to be used.
I mean, I always look at it as well from the bigger picture of that long-term property goal that everyone thinks, oh, you're only getting a 7% return, but they never ever seem to factor in the capital appreciation over a 20-year period.
Yeah. Well, the reason that I've decided to move more into the rental side is because I do think for the next year or two, property prices are going to go up, or certainly not go down, I don't think. So the money that you're bringing in on the rent is real money. You're not bringing in 10 grand to lose 10 grand on the property prices, which 3 months ago, it looked like that might be the case.
Yeah.
So that was what was stopping me moving into the rental side. So these ones I'll probably look at more of a kind of shorter term.
What's gave you that shift change then?
The estate agency market collapse,
right?
Really. So you've got a level of overheads in your business that you need to run it. You know, the advertising side obviously costs a lot of money, and there's no point in advertising if the stock's not there to bring on. But you've still got to keep advertising in order to get the properties that you would develop, and you know, so the overheads remain the same
without the income coming up.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, if Davy Hutton's still investing in buy-to-let property, then that's a good.
But then it's an interesting point of view as well, because I'm sitting from a different point of view, going, well, if I'm going to leverage at 70 or 75% loan to value right now, would I buy? No,
yeah, absolutely.
I don't think I would right now.
Well, I look at that differently, because if you look at, you're not making any cash flow, right?
Yeah,
but long term, I always like to think that I'm investing long term for capital growth as well.
Yeah.
I buy good quality areas. I've got some granters, as we call them now, but majority of my stuff's round about the kind of 180 to 100k. So it's no the 20 to 30 to 40 grand shiters.
Well,
so I'm getting capital growth. So if I'm leveraging, if I'm only putting a 25% deposit down,
you're growing that capital,
and you know, my 100 grand property goes up over 10 years, even if it goes up, I don't know, on average, like at the moment, property prices over the last year, and we're supposed to be in a shit time, have gone up 3% according to the latest ONS data here, up 3.3% in Scotland. So even if I average a 2 or 3% over 10 years on 100 grand, and I've leveraged that, and I've only put 25 grand in, then for me...
Yeah, you're working on as a strategist there. I don't really work like that. Every deal's individual. I bought keys for one last week in Dalry. Now, it's a 2-bed cottage flat in an area that's not seen growth in 1,000 years. So I bought it for 40 grand to be below the
ADS.
The threshold. There's a tenant in place paying 450 quid a month. It's bringing in 5,400 quid on 40 grand investment. It'll never make a bean in capital increase, but it's bringing in 15% forever.
Different strategies.
And he's a good tenant and he's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
And all he wanted was security of knowing that his landlord isn't going to have to sell his property. Now, you can stay in there for the next 40 years if you want, mate.
Different strokes, different folks.
Yeah, I like that.
Aye. So that was what I was going to read out there. So up over 3.3% over the last 12 months. But again, data lags. So really, these are sales that could have happened back in
this is where
October.
Davey and I just sit
data
here.
lags is a really interesting subject. I remember years ago having lunch with the chairman of RBS at the time, and it was a social thing. It wasn't a
Fred the Shred.
It wasn't. It was Sir George Matheson.
Fred was the
CEO.
CEO 2008.
Yeah.
And he got
And
absolutely.
it was a general chit chat like we're doing just now. And it 2008, probably 2009, right at the messy time, and everybody knew on the ground what the situation was. But I remember having the discussion that went along the lines of, at what point do you see problematic mortgages? Is it when people have missed 6 months mortgage? Is it when they've missed 1 month's mortgage? At what point? And say it was 6 months. Well, the guy that was going to miss the payment in his mortgage knew the month before he missed the payment. But the Bank of England only knows.
Aye.
8 months from that point or 9 months from that point. So the guy in the ground is actually way ahead in terms of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
That lag then comes in of how you respond to it.
Absolutely. So we're looking at...
It kind of gets quite an interesting point, because this is why I really love these chats, because I try and stay away from the media, the negativity. I try and, like you say, feel what's going on, the gut feeling of what's happening, speak to people, have conversations like this. Because I remember refinancing and buying in April 2008, being a fucking 22-year-old numpty that paid attention to nothing, thinking that I was on this property train going up the way, realising I just bought when a crash was already happening. But because I probably wasn't paying attention, getting a feel for it, I was around my circle of 19, 20-year-olds that were going on the piss all the time. I still bought at the flipping height of the market. It took me 14 years to recover for that flipping, that purchase going back up. And it's like exactly like you're saying, just keeping an eye on keeping a feel for what's going on and being aware of everything that's going on.
Yeah, I like...
You'll hear it before the media, basically.
I like the big picture stuff, but I like being able to break it down into how it affects me.
Yeah.
I like the monopoly board terminology. If the guy in the brown bit, the monopoly board can't sell his house, then he can't buy the bit in the light blue bit, and the light blue bit can't sell and move to the orange bit, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So what bits of the monopoly board are doing well just now, and what bits are doing badly. Mm-hmm. But do
you diversify your stock for that point?
Sorry?
Do you diversify your stock? Like you'd mentioned about the 40 grand cottage flat in Glasgow for that specific demographics. Do you go for higher end stuff, or no? Or do you...
No, as long as it fits the criteria of making the yield that it has to make. Mm-hmm. But the yield that it has to make for me is probably slightly different to what it is for you. No, it's not actually. Yeah. I'd be looking for 10% minimum on a yield just now. Yeah. You might look at it differently if you're buying something in Prime West End that you were going to get the capital increase on, because I think the prime stock will always rise. I don't think that's necessarily the same for the brown bit of the monopoly board.
Right, you guys like talking to the man in the street and the man on the ground, right? I like reading off the screen here, so I'm going to continue with my stats.
Right, I was saying this is where Davey and I just sit there and nod at you when you start reading the stats.
Right,
because 1:30, we weren't fucking reading this article.
The next article is about Fred Harrison. Now, this is the guy that invented the 18-year property cycle.
Oh, I like this.
So he says that house prices have still got another 20% to rise, and they're going to start falling in 2026. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines, like me, probably, I'm just waiting for that right moment. So this is your time to benefit from another 20% increase over the next 2 years.
For a crashy 60%.
So he's obviously, if you look at his timeline, 18-year property cycle, apparently we're still in that. So we had the mid-cycle dip or the mid-cycle wobble. Was probably that little time, maybe just before the pandemic or just kind of during. And then as soon as we came out, then we went into that explosive stage. Mm-hmm. But he's saying that what you see in the kind of slowdown is really just that kind of that correction of that post-pandemic explosion. Yeah. And really, if you average it out over the last, say, 3 years, then we're still in that really strong growth phase before the crash. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. And he's basically saying Harrison is almost certain that this will come in late 2026, and the only potential obstacle that could upset his timeline is war, which we've got quite a lot of at the moment, and probably a bit more to come as well. Obviously, with Putin's invasion in Ukraine and the Middle East situation. So I don't know. This is why I think maybe the 18-year property cycle, although he has got it right the last 2 times. This is the guy he predicted correctly the 2008 crash. One of the few.
How do you think it is that I can buy these properties for cash? Do you think it's because I predicted the market wrong? Yeah. There was more than your man Fred that predicted when it was going up.
I'll need to rewind Radio Clyde back to 2007 and see what Davy's ads were saying back then.
I think that the market probably is going to rise, but there's so many uncertainties about there just now relating to politics.
Aye.
If you went into a bookies 30 years ago and said, what are the odds on me being part of the last generation of people on Earth? They'd have told you it was 1,000,000 to 1. If you went in today after the pandemic and a war in Ukraine and Donald Trump and artificial intelligence and global warming, climate change, they're going to tell you it's even money right now. Now, the world is an uncertain place. They're talking about conscription for young people. Can you imagine that?
I think David just took your fucking title in a negative, Nick.
Can you imagine the Gen Zs like marching into battle, doing their live feeds? We ran about, we dodged bullets all day. Then this nasty Sergeant Major shouted at me and I cried. And it's just not going to happen. And the nonsense that's spoken, did we learn nothing during the pandemic? If China want to go to war with us, they'll switch the supply chain off and we're fucked. That's the situation that we've got ourselves into. The social media stuff is, the bot stuff and everything all controlled by Russia. And until we catch up and learn how to harness that stuff, the world's going to be an uncertain place. And unfortunately, all these politics affect every market. Mm-hmm. You cannot have the world falling apart and your property market booming. That cannot happen. So predicting what it's going to do in 2026 is so difficult because you would need to know the answer of what happens in with the gas supply. You need to know the answer of what happens with the relationship with China.
Well, he's been right the last 2 times, so maybe he's going to be right again.
Well, put your money where your mouth is and get in there, Nick.
Well, actually, we made our predictions right at the start of the year. I think I said...
don't make the predictions, buy the fucking properties.
Quite right. I need to get off my arse. Actually buy something this year. I need to buy at least one property.
Do you know what? I got a portfolio sitting midway through Glasgow way yesterday. 10-15% discount, negative to me, but that would be suit you into a fucking tea. Because that discount, you get 20%. Yeah, nothing. You get 20% growth's going to give you next 30% in the next fucking 2 years. Go for it, Nick.
Right. Next article.
Look, he's fucking.
We'll talk later on means we're not going to talk later.
Look, he's changing the subject quickly here.
Next article. I need to get rid of those ones that are in my personal name first of all.
I just got to name my last one. Can we fucking celebrate that?
Tax.
The last property in my own personal name sold last week.
That was a relief. That's a real tax burden.
That was one of the problems that I had. I had or I've got just now. I've got a load of properties in my own name, myself and my wife, to take advantage of the capital gains tax allowances. And effectively what happened then is you had a conveyor belt. You could sell one every year, make £27,000 a year tax-free off the capital gains. Then they take that away very suddenly. And I've now got, a decent-sized portfolio of properties sitting in my name, which is now
a problem.
It's now a problem because you can't just transfer the name over to anybody else, and that is a bit of an issue that I'm having to deal with just now. You want to go back to your article here, don't you?
He's fucking dying to.
Because you know why?
Honestly, Nick, do you play cricket? No, you should take it up because that's a right boring sport that I think you would love.
Getting back to this. I don't have a comeback to that. I am a bit of a boring bastard.
I didn't watch you search for a comeback there. I watched your wheels turning away. Nothing
apart from his pearl earrings, which I've already brought up. Do you steal them? Is that Mrs. Hutton's earrings?
No. I've got my very own collection. I've been wearing stuff like this a long time, Nick. You've known me a long time. You're just looking at me in a different way just now.
50.
Try look for ripping.
I'm mentally undressed.
Good old Daily Mail. I love a Daily Mail article. This one is the 50 buy-to-let, the top 50 buy-to-let hotspots of where you can still make a profit, right? So I only brought this one up because it makes Aberdeen like it's like absolute dog shite, basically. So I like ripping in Aberdeen because that's where he has his 100 properties.
I'm going to be right.
Good thing from your point of view, Stephen, it's in the Daily Mail.
Aye. So it must be absolute pish.
So what I say, right, top spot is Bristol, right? Okay, fair enough. But Glasgow is like, I think 7th, right, down the list. So good for Glasgow, obviously, where I have my properties. Aberdeen is 4th bottom.
Oof.
So 46th place, and they've given them each an investment score as well, right? Out of 100. Right, so Glasgow is 61 out of 100. No, sorry, Glasgow's 61 out of 100, so mid-range. Aberdeen is 10, and they've got a traffic light system as well, just to make it even easier for you to kind of see. So Glasgow's in the green, and Aberdeen's in the red. So yeah, they've basically based their figures on property prices, average rent, and what that translates to in a yield. Basically, a simple yield calculator.
This isn't really a debate, Nick, because this is just you working it up your mate.
This is me just bashing Aberdeen. Like, I always like to get a wee dig in there. But I mean,
I'm sitting there. I'm happy with it.
He's all right. How's your roof repairs going up there?
Fucking roof repairs. Oh.
The old Granite City. Granite City's
wind blowing in from different angles. It hasn't blown in for 20 years and give me more roof repairs than ever.
So what's your question, Nick?
So that was
what
just...
are you getting at here?
No, it's just basically, if you want to come invest in Glasgow for a good solid...
Nick Sherman,
a good solid yield, come and speak to me. We're sourcing properties for investors.
But Nick doesn't buy his own stuff though. But
concentrating on the business and finding good deals for our clients.
Oh, I love it, lad.
Definitely. A wee plug in there. Right.
Each one of us is trying to sell something.
Okay, so you don't like that article. So moving on to the next one then, see if we can get you a wee bit of conversation going here. And you touched on it earlier, Davy. Do
you know what? This is like proper stato stuff here. My son does this. He's 17. And he can tell you every stat about every footballer, what they're worth, how many goals they've scored, where they came from, where they started their career off. He can do the same with rugby. Never watched a football game in his life. Never watched a full rugby game in his fucking life. This is exactly the same with you. Right? Here's all the stats off my computer. Never bought a property in my purse.
No, this one will you see this on the ground, right? And it's the headline is "New buy-to-let lending to older borrowers falls off a cliff." According to UK Finance, in 2022,
what the class is an older borrower?
Wait a minute, give me a chance to read you out the article, right? In 2022, 16,900 loans were issued to over 55s, and this year there was only 7,900, so pretty much half the number of buy-to-let loans going out to older landlords. So this is what we were talking about earlier. Basically, older kind of landlords, maybe they've got a couple of properties in their portfolio. It's not really worth it anymore, is it? It's selling up.
Or is it that they're not leveraging? I mean, it's borrowing, they might just be buying cash.
Possibly.
Whereas folk that are starting out in their 20s or 30s are going to be buying and leveraging to pay off the debt.
So instead of buying 3 properties and leveraging themselves, they might buy 1 property.
It's an awful big... I mean, it's half the number of loans. So I'm just thinking, does that translate to sales? You know, people...
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, why were older people coming into the buy-to-let market? Because they were getting no return in the banks. They were getting very little return off the stock markets, and they were getting lucrative returns on property. So now the property returns have dropped.
Aye. Or did they keep it for the retirement, pay the debt off instead of when they turned 55 or over, they sold the flipping thing.
But what I'm saying is also the capital gains tax don't exist anymore. Yeah. So there's a big reason for not getting into property. If you're in the older market, you're not getting £27,000 tax free in the way that you were. You're also having to pay the second property tax in Scotland at 6%. For something that, if you're older, is a relatively short-term thing that you're doing. So the costs are massive and the exit benefits are not good.
Exactly. We've seen that. We've lost a few lately.
Was that a good summary?
Yes.
Thank you.
I like that. And we've lost a few lately because, obviously it's not working for a lot of people as well. If their personal names, they say they've got another employment, high income earner. They're getting taxed on that full rental income.
Yeah, if you're doing it as a career, you roll with all these things. If you're doing it as a kind of, playing with the market, it becomes not much fun.
Yeah.
And that's why there's been such a rise in limited company buy-to-let investing as well.
Yes, exactly.
Everyone's putting them through companies and they've registered off the scale. The number of companies that are now investment portfolios. Right, okay, we'll rip through these. We've got another couple of minutes here just to finish off. And this
never ripped through anything in his life, did he?
This one is, again, getting on to the politics, which I know you love. It's basically about Scottish government.
I don't love politics. Are politicians, but politics is everything. Politics is like your health. Politics is your wealth.
It's life. It's life.
Exactly.
That's what I mean. It's like, it's topical.
So what's happened in life just now is your phone gives you access to the internet, which gives you access to everything. Every library in the world, the information is there, but people can choose what they want to see. So it's a little bit like you get locked in Tesco's, or you live in Tesco's for a month. You choose whether you want to eat well, or you choose whether you live in the sweetie aisle. And the problem is that the majority of the population live in the sweetie aisle. That's why Nigel Farage is in the jungle, because that's the sweetie aisle.
Aye.
That's where people see him.
Well, that's a good sum up. Recently, I've just become like immersed in all this stuff, because before I was in the sweetie aisle.
Mm.
But now, I was like, Stephen, I don't listen to news. I switch off. I don't have an interest, or like, I'm not interested in politics. But like you say, it is life. Well, it's day to day, affects you.
If you want to predict markets, you have to watch for the shit cloud. You have to know where it's coming from, and then you react accordingly. So, like you're saying to me there, that this guy here is saying that the market is probably going to rise this year. You know that. And if you don't know that, you should know that, because if you're watching the market, mortgages are becoming easier to get. So there's more buyers coming into the market. That the seller rates aren't going up. People are exiting the market. So there's less properties than buyers. It's going to go up. It's simple kind of supply and demand.
Okay, Scottish rental scene. We've had rent caps.
Doesn't like that, does he?
We had
pulling away from his article.
We've had rent caps obviously imposed by the Scottish government.
Can we read in this episode? Nick takes a ripping for Davy and Stevie. Sorry, mate.
It's 2 against 1 now, guys.
That's because you gave her a fucking homework at 1:30 this morning.
I know, so you're no interested in my articles. I need to give you at least 5
in your shower, I want you to check your ass and see if I'm still hanging at you.
Right. Looking at the rent caps that have happened in the Scottish government over the last couple of years, we've had these restrictions imposed on us as investors and landlords, right? We've now got official data, stats, to show that it's backfired and the government have made an arse of it. And this is coming back. This is coming back to the government meddling in a free market economy. And basically, an analysis by Zoopla says rent controls introduced in Scotland have directly led to higher rents. The Properties Portal research team has analysed rents north of the border since September 2022, when Scottish Parliament introduced the rent caps on annual rises to existing tenancies. While intended to reduce cost of living pressures for renters, it means landlords are now going higher at the start of the tenancy to cover their costs and limited increases during the contract. This leads to Scotland having the highest level of annual rent inflation in the whole of the UK at 11.1%. The average monthly rent in Scotland stands at £790, £82 more than a year ago. So how can they get away with this? Patrick Harvey and the Scottish government, they were told by numerous people right at the start.
Passion coming in here now.
There was
a venom coming in here.
Any country that you looked at,
don't thump that table, it's glass, just be careful.
Any country that you looked at and that have tried this, Ireland tried it, Berlin, several other countries.
You're just making up places. Can you think anymore? Several other places, various parts of Fife.
It's failed in the past. Yeah. So why?
Well, what's the average? I mean, I've not looked at the article. What's the average? So it's been held in check for a period of how many years?
Probably a couple of years now. This has been run.
3 years, probably.
Legislation.
Then they've released it, and everything's jumped up for new rentals.
Well, from the 1st of April, the cap is away. So
yes,
18 months. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that the free market will jump to where it should have been, and that average will be the same curve as it would have been. I agree with you. It's a shit show.
I think it's forced landlords to actually do those increases. Than like a lot of landlords just went up. Like you've talked before, how you just don't sort of increase your rents.
Well, I don't have to. I mean, I increase them when people leave because you'll always get
fair market rent.
You'll always get the market rent for it. It's not like I'm putting it on the market £200 under the market value per month. But thereafter, I feel maybe I'm in a position where I can afford to be. Well, I hesitate to say fair to people because people that are sitting with 70 and 80% mortgages still want to be fair to people, but the costs are getting hammered. The costs have to go somewhere. I'm not obviously getting these costs because I don't have mortgages on them. But I don't know how you solve this problem.
The only way to solve it is by building more houses, basically, and the number of new build homes being started is down 26%.
But these people building the homes, Nick, are not daft. They're like diamond merchants and gold merchants. They know, or Rolex dealers, they know how many to release onto the market to keep the prices where they want them to be. That's back to the corporate control type thing.
It's the same as build to rent as well. So build to rent working with these big corporations and pension funds, they're only in it to make money. So that's not the answer to it either. That'll rise rents even more. So the only answer is social housing on a massive scale.
Yes.
Post-war building like the big high-rise blocks that you saw in Glasgow.
Yes. Will it happen? No.
Not with the Scottish Government basically reducing their budget in December for social house building by 26%. No,
you know that the Scottish Government is like minuscule by comparison to the UK.
Well,
government.
They're getting fed the money basically, ultimately from.
Oh yeah, and you're talking about there is a radical change in policy. That goes from when we originally built the council house stock, then we sold it off. Now we're basically talking about building it again,
buying it back.
Where is the political will to do that? Because I don't see it. Because your politics exists in the centre. Keir Starmer is like Tony Blair. He's not a socialist. He's a middle ground politician, which is fine. But there's no radical changes going to come in from this. So
are we the problem? Are we the problem?
Landlords?
Yeah.
No. We react. We react to opportunities. You're the entrepreneur.
How many properties do you own that came out with the right to buy, Maggie Thatcher's right to buy? Like ex-council houses, you just talked about that one in Dalry and Ayrshire, do you know what I mean?
Well, this is, in theory, Maggie Thatcher gave everybody the right to buy their property, which created a wealth drive, allowed people to buy the cars, to go to the holidays, to put the new kitchens in, all of that kind of stuff. But what it did, certainly initially when the mortgage laws were the way they were, everybody had to move every 5 years to realise the profit on their property. And they kept trading up and getting a bigger mortgage. Mortgages were easy to get. You just signed a bit of paper and they gave you them. And the whole thing was fueled on this Ponzi scheme. But what we did was we made people or put people in situations where they no longer knew their neighbours, they no longer knew their neighbourhoods, and we lost community. We lost older people looking after kids. We lost kids looking after older people because they didn't know them. Old people were nervous around young people because they didn't know their parents and they couldn't clip their ears anymore and tell their mums and dads. And young people know that, so they take the rip out of the old people. And the whole thing collapses. Where society used to look after problems, it doesn't anymore. We phone the police, but we don't really have a police service anymore, so they can't come out. It's the whole thing collapses, and it's I don't know that people actually thought that. This is the benefit of hindsight. I don't believe when they did it, they thought this would happen. I don't think they thought it through like that. But we are where we are now, and you can't change it. How do you get the volume of council stock that you would need? How do you do it? Where's that money going to come from? Yeah. You're running a national debt of, they got us a £3 trillion. You know, when Tony Blair left office, and I don't know when he left office, but
99 or something like that.
no, 2004. It was a 500 billion. So we've times our national debt by 6 in that time scale. It took us 300 and something years to get to that 500 billion, and we've put 2 trillion onto it since then. Where is this money going to come from?
And to end on that note, we're all fucked. Thanks very much, Davy Hutton. Have you got any positive words to leave the podcast with?
We started on a fucking...
The odds of us all dying on the same day are pretty good. So this thing about me being older than you is not relevant. It doesn't matter.
Aye.
We're all now the same age.
I think we've got at least probably 10 viral clips out of Davy there that we can stick on TikTok.
All at your expense.
You've also ripped me a new arsehole, so thanks very much. Thanks very much for coming in, David. Looking forward to the next time.
Thank you, cheers.
In the meantime, get it up, you. Sold!